with some work. So I'll be taking 1 hour lecture on IoT cloud. Okay. Ma'am will continue on Saturday. Okay. As I mentioned, today's topic is on IoT cloud. So we'll see the cloud storage models and communication APIs for IoT. Okay. So in here we are studying only the theoretical aspect of the IoT cloud computing. The practical aspect we are not covering since it is only for 1 hour. And there is a textbook meant for this in your reference. So that is Internet of Things, a hands-on approach. Okay, so by Ashwini. So this textbook you can make use for this lecture. So if you want, you can purchase that. Otherwise, I don't think there is a soft copy available for this particular textbook because I have searched for that. So if you would like to buy, please do buy the same. But as I said, we are covering only the theoretical aspect for only 1 hour. So if you want, you can purchase. Otherwise, these PPTs and explanations will be sufficient for you. Okay. So first, we'll see what is cloud computing. So as you all aware of, what is cloud computing basically? Can somebody answer? Please do answer. Okay. So basically, cloud computing is a computing paradigm wherein you have a number of applications and services. According to your wish, you can request for those applications and services. Some of the platforms provide few restricted applications and services for free, whereas most of the cloud computing platforms provide their applications and services basically for by charging, right? So we are all using the cloud computing paradigm, right? Some of the cloud computing applications we are using for storage and for getting some of the services, right? So when we are talking about the Internet of Things, the major applications of cloud computing is for storing the massive amount of data which is produced by the IoT devices, right? So we have seen in the earlier lectures that we have end devices, and these end devices produces a massive amount of data that need to be stored somewhere, and you need to process these informations in order to get insights, is it not? So basically, the cloud computing paradigm is best suitable for IoT applications wherein the devices, huge amount of devices, right? Huge amount of devices, because all the devices are getting connected. So these devices produce a huge volume of data, and these volume of data need to be stored somewhere, and it need to be processed, and suitable insights must be obtained from those data. So this cloud computing provides storage and various kinds of applications, and provide frameworks for creating the applications, and also it offers services, right? So these services we can make use of for performing various applications implementation you can make use of. So we know that the cloud computing paradigm basically work with the help of internet, because in order to get services or create applications, retrieve information from other applications and services, so you need definitely the internet connection. So that is one of the constraints of cloud computing. You must have an internet. So similarly, for the IoT systems as well, the IoT becomes active only when the devices are connected with the help of internet. So for both the cloud computing as well as for IoT, the internet is a must thing, wherein you can make use of internet for getting applications and services, right? If no internet, it just acts like a cloud client and server architecture wherein you can get some information from another machine and use that information for work processing. Okay, so when IoT, you are talking about IoT, you must have an internet. So similarly, cloud computing paradigm also make use of internet. So it's a must for both IoT and cloud computing. So basically, we have a number of APIs which we make use in order for basically create applications and to process the information. So this number of APIs access, we will see a few of the APIs. Okay, and number of protocols access. So that also we'll see. Okay. So one of the protocol we have is called the Web Application Messaging Protocol. Here I have mentioned WAMP. WAMP is a web application protocol. It's also a platform as a service for IoT applications. There are various applications or various services like AWS services, then some of the web application frameworks. Okay, so all these are available. And another thing is Civly, that is also another service. Basically, it is a service provided by Google. Okay, so we will see this Civily also a platform as a service. We'll see each one in the next slide. First, we will start with the web application messaging protocol. Okay, so web application messaging protocol is basically a protocol which is used for communication between different applications. Okay, so it is nothing but a sub protocol of our WebSocket. So, and specifically for IoT, when you have to develop some web application, so we can make use of this Autobahn, which is nothing but an open source real-time framework for implementing this messaging protocol. Okay, so we can make use of this Autobahn and create the applications and pass messages between different applications. Okay, and this this web application protocol basically work with the help of say publish subscribe messaging pattern or RPC messaging pattern. So you are already aware of this publish subscribe messaging pattern and RPC messaging pattern, which are nothing but architectural patterns, right? Architectural patterns, software architectural patterns, which are basically responsible for or which are created in such a way that two systems communicate or pass messages between each other. So in first we'll see the publish subscribe messaging architectural pattern. So what is this architectural pattern? Basically, it's a framework for exchanging messages between the component called the publisher and another component called subscriber. Okay. So in between this publisher component and subscriber component, we have one more additional component called broker. Broker is nothing but something, or you can consider it as a router which routes the information from a publisher to a subscriber. Okay, so there could be n number of publishers and n number of subscribers available in a particular environment. So publisher is the one which is basically responsible for publishing or passing messages or events to a particular channel. So say in here in a diagram, you can see that publisher, say a particular sensor is publishing the temperature what is available in the environment right now. And this information could be made use by any number of devices for viewing the insights to the user. Okay, so that is happening over this broker. Okay, so what this publisher does is it just publishes the messages or events that are happening to the channel, and the subscribers can then sign up for getting these messages. So the key benefit of having this publisher subscriber messaging pattern is that the movement between the messages between different components will happen without these publishers or subscribers identity. Say they need not have a direct contact, or the subscriber need not directly register with the publisher. So what the subscriber can do is subscriber can just register with the broker. Okay, there need not be a direct connectivity between the publisher and subscriber. They just need to subscribe to the to a particular publisher in the broker intermediate device, and the publisher will be publishing the information in the to the broker basically, and from there, whenever the subscriber is ready to get the information, and as and when the subscriber needs some kind of information, you can contact the broker and retrieve information from there. Okay, so that is the basic idea behind publish subscribe messaging pattern. So the thing is, here the broker is basically responsible for all the message routing and distribution. So that's only one thing that you need to remember. Okay. So as I mentioned, there could be multiple publishers that can publish the message, or multiple subscribers that can get the information from this publisher through with the help of a broker. So the advantages of having this publish subscribe model is the decoupling of basically the publisher and subscriber, I can say, and because there is no connectivity between direct connectivity between the publisher and subscriber. Okay, so there is a decoupling, and there are two aspects. One aspect is it could be decoupled spatially. That means subscribers and publishers need not establish a direct connection, and new subscribers do not need to modify the publisher's behavior when they want to join the network. They can just subscribe to the broker. Also, it could be decoupling by time. Okay, wherein subscribers and publishers do not need to be online at the same time, right? Whenever there is no subscriber, in that case as well, the publisher can just place the information to the broker. Later, whenever the publisher comes online, can pick the information from the broker as well. So there are two ways it is beneficial. One is spatially, they need not be connected directly to each other, and another thing is they need not be available at the same time online. So basically, this paradigm works perfect for IoT systems. Okay. Now comes the RPC. I hope it is clear. It's very simple. Comes the RPC. Next, we have not kept any. RPC. Here there is a slide for RPC. So basically, similar to the publish subscribe platform, we have RPC messaging pattern. It's entirely different from the publish subscribe pattern, wherein say if you have a component A and component B, component A or an application can get services, or it can get the services from another component, say B, by calling the procedure which is available in the component B. Okay, so there will be a caller who will be available in, say, component A, and the caller can call the routine which is available in component B remotely. Okay, so that is the basic idea behind RPC. So this caller and callee can communicate each other. Say the caller want to pass some of the parameters to the procedure. That is also possible, and it can get the return values from the procedure. Okay, so that way, whenever the particular component need service, it can invoke another component's corresponding procedure and get the things done. So that is the RPC model of calling the or passing the messages between two components. Okay, then there exists an additional component which is called as a dealer, similar to the broker of your publish subscriber messaging pattern, we have a dealer here. Okay, so dealer is just a router which is forwarding these messages between subscriber, sorry, between the caller and the callee. Okay, so it's very similar to the publish subscriber in the pattern, but the way they invoke the routines and retrieve the result back is different when compared to publish subscriber. Okay, so here is a block diagram which shows the WAMP session. So as I said, the WAMP is using these publish subscriber and RPC messaging patterns for communication between two different software components, right? So in here, it just shows a WAMP session between client and a router. So the client device will have the role of, could be the publisher, or it could be subscriber, or it could be the caller of RPC, or it could be the callee of RPC. So basically, you will have a transport, and over the transport, you will have the sessions that will be running. And so for each session, it could the publisher say it could contact the subscriber with the help of broker of the router, or the caller could contact the callee with the help of dealer of the router. Okay, this is just to block diagram, just shows how this WAMP session is happening between the client and the router. So this also I talked about the spatial and time decoupling. Yeah. Now how this WAMP protocol is working. So as I said, the previous block diagram, we have a transport and TCP connection which is to be established, and TLS connection that is established at the beginning. Then you can have a request to set up the WebSocket. So this is nothing but how a simple protocol works. You all have a very good idea about this. So basically, we know that things happen by setting the WebSocket connection initially. Two components communicate with the help of having a session, right, with the help of WebSocket, and responses for accepting the request, and then this WAMP will be established, and once it is done, the WAMP session lifetime is over, then WAMP will be closed. So likewise, once the TCP connection is established and once the session starts, the messages will get passed from one component to the other component, and finally the WebSocket will be closed, and the connection also will be the transport connection also will be closed at the end. So that is the basic idea behind how a protocol works. Similar to any other protocol, we have transport, then session, and then communication happens, and then the tearing of the session happens, and tearing of the transport also happens. Okay, so that's for WAMP protocol. Next is Civly. Civly is basically a platform as a service for creating solutions for Internet of Things. It's meant for basically IoT systems. Okay, it's a commercial platform which is available for creating solutions for IoT systems. Okay, so similar to WAMP, here the Civly also very similar to the framework that which is helping the IoT systems to have a environment for processing the data. Okay, processing the data and getting the insights. So main function of Civly is basically it will be connecting the different devices that are available, that is the end devices, and they will also manage the connected end devices, and then manages whatever data these devices produce, and finally they integrate the data into other systems that are available in the IoT. probably they will pass from the end devices to the other remote systems which are making use of this device. So basically all the backend structure is managed by Civili for data collection management and distribution infrastructure will be maintained by this Civili for handling the data produced by different end devices. Okay, so that's the main intention behind Civili. Okay, remember that it is a platform as service solution for IoT systems and which is maintained by Google. It also supports multiple languages, not only a specific language, a lot of other languages it supports. Along with that, it implements HTTP standard APIs and sockets. So all these are managed by Civili PaaS, okay, for supporting IoT systems. Next one is Django is basically a Python web application framework. Okay, here I have the software architecture corresponding to followed by Django. Okay, the software architecture which is corresponding to Django is called the model template view software architecture, which is shown here. So what is Django first? As I mentioned, it is a open source web application which is basically written in Python language. Okay, it has a number of options or templates available which could be used for making the IoT based web systems application. Here, I'll explain how this web application protocol, web application framework is modeled with this software architectural pattern called model template view. Okay. You might have learned about model view controller. Anybody having any idea about model view controller? MVC architecture? No. Okay, model view controller is again a software architectural pattern wherein you have to write all the control specific code at the controller part. But here it's very different from that model view controller wherein you have templates available. You don't need to write the complete code for the controller, but the template will handle the front end part of the same. So you just need to modify the template or add some of the contents or modify the content so that you can customize it for your own wish. So the main use of this model template view is it will be very easy to generate the web platforms for say connecting different IoT systems and to have corresponding representation in the web pages. So you will be easily able to create the web pages with the help of this model template view. Okay, rather than model view controller, wherein all templates are available. You can just make use of those templates and you can write. So basically here it uses JavaScript or CSS for modifying the code for the front end view. So the whatever is shown inside this green box is corresponding to this Django framework, and web browsers and databases are the components which are present outside this model view architecture. So user will be interacting with the web browser, right? And say, for example, user type some kind of URL into it. This URL information will be passed to the view, and the view sees if that whatever template is available in the caching framework or not. If available from the cache, it will be retrieved to the user. If not available, it passes this information requested to the view. View basically here, that's what I said. Here you can write the code, or you can actually generate the web pages with the help of these templates. Okay, view basically determines what data that is to be displayed and or that is to be retrieved from the database, and passes the information, say basically from the browser to the model, or from the model to the template. So while requesting for an information, it makes the corresponding view from the user information. It creates the view required and passes to the model. The model sees the data is available in a particular definition or not. The model is the one which is going to define the kind of definitions what is required for storing the data, or retrieving and passing the data to the view. Okay, so model is basically responsible for defining the stored data, and also it will interact with the database. This database basically any kind of database. It could be a relational database or non-relational database. So the corresponding information will be retrieved and will be given back to the view. View again passes the information to the caching and finally to the browser. So model, as I said, is just acts as a definition for some stored data, and finally it will be handling the interactions with the database. Okay, it could be say an XML file. The data could be stored in an XML file, or as I mentioned, it could be in a relational database as well. Okay, and this Django model could be say a Python class which will be defining how the representation of the variables and ultimately the methods, how the methods could be. So I hope it is clear. The intention of this model is to define how the representation of model could be. Sorry, database could be, how variables and method could be present in the database. So model is responsible for defining all this. Okay, and as I said, view now it could return the values, or it could forward the values to the model. Okay, so that is the major purpose of this model view template architecture. Yeah, I hope it is clear. So remember that Django is open source web application framework wherein you have the model view template architecture available. We can modify just the template, and the rest of the things will be taken care by itself. And you can create the web applications easily for IoT systems, and then you can make use of browser and for retrieving the information from the database and to display in a manner which you want to. Next comes Amazon Web Services for IoT. Remember, we have an assignment scheduled at 9:30. So I'll complete in 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. So all of you must attend the assignment which is scheduled as 9:30. Next comes the Amazon Web Services. Okay. So Amazon basically provides a number of services like EC2 or auto scaling, simple storage services, relational database services, and DynamoDB, Kinesis, then SQS. So all these are Amazon services for IoT. So first we will see EC2. Amazon EC2 is basically an infrastructure as a service which is provided by Amazon, right? You might be aware of this. Some of you might have used also Amazon EC2. which basically provides whatever infrastructure you need with the help of say virtual machines. So you can just request for how much capacity you need, what are the computing power you need, how much storage you need, and pay for how much your requirement is. According to that, they will charge from you, and you can make use of that. So that is Amazon EC2. Then comes Amazon auto scaling. Auto scaling is very similar to Amazon EC2. So according to user requirement, he can request for the storage. So in auto scaling, what happens is user can increase the whatever capacity they need according to their requirement. Okay, how much storage you need or how much resources you need at a particular time, that you can decide, and as you work with that, it will scale according to your requirement. So and later you can pay for what you have used also. Okay. So basically the main intention of this auto scaling is this will enable you to scale down or scale up according to your workload, whatever you want to execute or whatever you want to allocate at a particular time. So easy scaling up and easy scale down happens with the auto scaling. That is the major attraction of this Amazon auto scaling. Then comes the S3, Amazon S3. Amazon S3 is nothing but the simple storage and service, basically an online cloud data storage infrastructure, which is used for storing and retrieving a large amount of data. Okay, similar to auto scaling, this is also reliable, and this is scalable, fast, and fully redundant and affordable storage infrastructure. Okay. It can also serve as raw data store for IoT systems, raw data such as sensor data, image, audio, etc. Next comes Amazon relational database services. This will also enable you to create instances of relational databases like MySQL, Oracle, or SQL databases. So this is basically for relational database. Remember, so that is the difference when compared to other systems. It's meant for RD relational database systems. Okay, to create the web services. Again, this is could be set up, operate, and scale relational database in cloud. Next comes DynamoDB. It is fully managed, scalable, and high performance NoSQL database service, and again could be used as a scalable data store for IoT systems. Now comes Amazon Kinesis. Kinesis also fully managed commercial service. Basically, that is used for real-time processing of streaming data. Okay, for example, or video data, audio data, that could be used with Kinesis, so that it scales automatically and then when the user need arises, right? So all these platforms are basically helpful for user intention. It identifies whether the user's requirement is more or not, and it scales up and scales down accordingly. Okay. Kinesis has, basically supports data blob of size 50 KB. What is this data blob? Basically, if whenever you want more amount of space, every time it finds out an edge for the current requirement, then it will be scaled up by 50 kilobytes. So that is what the peculiarity of this Kinesis it scales automatically to handle large volumes, and the rate of scaling is basically 50 kb. This streaming data will be basically collected by Kinesis and can be processed by applications using Amazon EC2 instances. As we have seen that it could be used for or by any other platform, or it can make use of these, and Kinesis itself can compute and get the insights from that. Next comes Amazon SQS. SQS is also very similar to Kinesis. Okay, difference is that Kinesis is intended for real-time applications with high data ingress and egress rates, whereas SQS is just like a queue system that stores and releases the messages in scalable manner. So what it means, SQS could be used by, say, distributed applications and all, wherein you can pass information from one distributed system to the other distributed system, but through with the help of queuing system. Okay. That's the main advantage of SQS when compared to Kinesis. Kinesis basically used for real-time applications, right? Whereas this systems, whenever they need to exchange information, basically in the distributed systems, and whenever you want to exchange the information between applications or components frequently, we could make use of SQS, which can just make use of simple queues for storing the information temporarily and then pass it to the other device. So according to your requirement of creating different IoT systems, you can choose the best one suits for your application. So these are all some of the platforms, services which are available for IoT systems by Amazon. So what are they? One is Amazon EC2, then auto scaling, then Amazon S3, right? Then Amazon RDS for relational database services, and DynamoDB, Kinesis, then finally SQS. The last one is Skynet IoT messaging platform. It's not part of Amazon. It's a separate one. Very similar to other systems. This is also an open source messaging platform for IoT systems. Skynet supports HTTP, REST, and real-time WebSockets. Whenever you want to work with this Kinesis, you have to register all your devices into this platform. Then it will provide a UUID. UUID is nothing but the universally unique identifier. Okay, this UUID will help the devices to be identified uniquely. So every device that is available in the internet will be identified by this UUID basically. So it's a 128-bit label which will be provided to all the devices, and it can have an associated secret token as well for privacy purpose, right? So devices will be given auto-generated UID whenever these devices are introduced into this platform. Okay, and further communications will be happening with this UID. And as we know, it can make use of HTTP, REST APIs, and real-time web sockets, and which will help you convert the protocols and whenever the applications interact with each other. So this Skynet IoT messaging platform is another IoT platform. So today we have seen a number of IoT platforms and services like WAMP, Civili, then Python web application framework, Django, then Amazon Web Services, and finally Skynet IoT platform for messaging services. Okay. Now you can wait for 9:30 so that you can answer the quiz. Okay, any doubts?